Energy Management System, inilah perjalanan kami.
Terima kasih Bapak Ibu dari
jajaran manajemen Angkasa Pura I sangat mengapresiasi dukungan serta kerjasama Ditjen EBTKE, Kementerian ESDM, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara Igusti Ngurah Rai, Bali.
Jajaran manajemen PT Angkasa Pura II mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian ESDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 Bandara Igusti Terminal 3.
Jajaran manajemen PT Kilang Pertamina Internasional Unit Cilacap mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian ESDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di PT Kilang Pertamina Internasional Unit Cilacap.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada pihak yang mendukung bersama pada UNDP dalam proses pelaksanaan ISO 50001. Kami berharap kerjasama yang begini tetap berkelanjutan.
Recording in progress.
penerapan subsektor ketenagalistrikan terhadap uji coba pasar karbon sektor energi oleh Bapak Rida Mulyana selaku Direktur Jenderal Ketenagalistrikan Kementerian ESDM.
Selain itu, carbon market dan carbon price harus menjadi bagian dari upaya penanganan isu perubahan iklim. Indonesia akan dapat berkontribusi lebih cepat bagi net zero emission dunia.
UNDP Indonesia bekerja sama dengan Ditjen EBTKE Kementerian ESDM. M3 telah berhasil mendukung 3 BUMN dalam melakukan Energy Management System. Inilah perjalanan kami.
Ya, terima kasih Bapak Ibu dari
Jajaran Manajemen Angkasa Pura I sangat mengapresiasi dukungan serta kerjasama Ditjen EBTKE, Kementerian ESDM, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara I Gusti Ngurah Rai, Bali.
Jajaran manajemen PT Angkasa Pura II mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian SDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara Soekarno-Hatta, Terminal 3.
Jajaran manajemen PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian ESDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada pihak-pihak yang mendukung, terutama kepada UNDP dalam proses pelaksanaan ISO 50001. Kami berharap kerjasama yang baik ini tetap berkelanjutan.
pemaparan kesiapan subsektor ketenagalistrikan terhadap uji coba pasar karbon sektor energi oleh Bapak Rida Mulyana selaku Direktur Jenderal Ketenagalistrikan Kementerian ESDM.
Selain itu, carbon market dan carbon price harus menjadi bagian dari upaya penanganan isu perubahan iklim. Indonesia akan dapat berkontribusi lebih cepat bagi net zero emission dunia.
UNDP Indonesia bekerja sama dengan Ditjen EBTKE Kementerian ESDM. M3 telah berhasil mendukung 3 BUMN dalam melakukan Energy Management System. Inilah perjalanan kami.
Ya, terima kasih Bapak Ibu dari
Jajaran Manajemen Angkasa Pura I sangat mengapresiasi dukungan serta kerjasama Ditjen EBTKE, Kementerian ESDM, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara I Gusti Ngurah Rai, Bali.
Jajaran manajemen PT Angkasa Pura II mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian SDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara Soekarno-Hatta, Terminal 3.
Jajaran manajemen PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian ESDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada pihak-pihak yang mendukung, terutama kepada UNDP dalam proses pelaksanaan ISO 50001. Kami berharap kerjasama yang baik ini tetap berkelanjutan.
Kesiapan subsektor ketenagalistrikan terhadap uji coba pasar karbon sektor energi oleh Bapak Rida Mulyana selaku Direktur Jenderal Ketenagalistrikan Kementerian ESDM.
Selain itu, carbon market dan carbon price harus menjadi bagian dari upaya penanganan isu perubahan iklim. Indonesia akan dapat berkontribusi lebih cepat bagi net zero emission dunia.
UNDP Indonesia bekerja sama dengan Ditjen EBTKE Kementerian ESDM. M3 telah berhasil mendukung 3 BUMN dalam melakukan Energy Management System. Inilah perjalanan kami.
Ya, terima kasih Bapak Ibu dari
Jajaran Manajemen Angkasa Pura I sangat mengapresiasi dukungan serta kerjasama Ditjen EBTKE, Kementerian ESDM, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara I Gusti Ngurah Rai, Bali.
Jajaran manajemen PT Angkasa Pura II mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian SDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara Soekarno-Hatta, Terminal 3.
Jajaran manajemen PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian ESDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada pihak-pihak yang mendukung, terutama kepada UNDP dalam proses pelaksanaan ISO 50001. Kami berharap kerjasama yang baik ini tetap berkelanjutan.
paparan kesiapan subsektor ketenagalistrikan terhadap uji coba pasar karbon sektor energi oleh Bapak Rida Mulyana selaku Direktur Jenderal Ketenagalistrikan Kementerian ESDM.
Selain itu, carbon market dan carbon price harus menjadi bagian dari upaya penanganan isu perubahan iklim. Indonesia akan dapat berkontribusi lebih cepat bagi net zero emission dunia.
UNDP Indonesia bekerja sama dengan Ditjen EBTKE Kementerian ESDM. M3 telah berhasil mendukung 3 BUMN dalam melakukan Energy Management System. Inilah perjalanan kami.
Ya, terima kasih Bapak Ibu dari
Jajaran Manajemen Angkasa Pura I sangat mengapresiasi dukungan serta kerjasama Ditjen EBTKE, Kementerian ESDM, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara I Gusti Ngurah Rai, Bali.
Jajaran manajemen PT Angkasa Pura II mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian ESDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di Bandara Soekarno-Hatta, Terminal 3.
Jajaran manajemen PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap mengucapkan apresiasi atas dukungan dan kerjasama Kementerian ESDM, Ditjen EBTKE, dan UNDP Indonesia dalam penerapan ISO 50001 di PT Kilang Pertamina International Unit Cilacap.
Terima kasih kami ucapkan kepada pihak-pihak yang mendukung, terutama kepada UNDP dalam proses pelaksanaan ISO 50001. Kami berharap kerjasama yang baik ini tetap berkelanjutan.
of Energy and Mineral Resources will join us. So please come and be seated. Hi. Take any chair sebelah sini juga kosong sebelah kiri. Tolong dong dimintain yang di belakang maju ke depan dulu, penuhin gitu. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished participants. We are pleased this morning to welcome you all with the presence of His Excellency, Minister Arifin Tasrif, Minister Energy and Mineral Resources. Sorry. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Hope that we are all in good health and in good spirit. In front of us, the beautiful flowers that bring us all the colors and also the spirit for today's discussions. Before we start the roundtable discussion today, I would like to extend appreciation and thank you to the Minister Arifin Tasrif for joining us this morning. And also I would like to welcome Ibu Kani Wignaraja. Thank you very much, Bu. Ibu Kani Wignaraja is the Assistant UN Secretary General and also the Regional Director Bureau for Asia and Pacific UNDP, who is really glad to learn and appreciate the process of the energy transition in Indonesia. Nonetheless, I would like also to welcome our distinguished keynote speakers, Bapak Rida Mulyana, Secretary General of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Bapak Norimasa Simomura, UNDP Resident Representative, Ibu Sinta Kamdani from Indonesian Chambers of Commerce and the chairperson of the B20, and also Bapak David Elzinga, the ETM Energy Transition Mechanism Team Leader from ASEAN Development Bank, and our feedback respondents. The panelists, Bapak Fabi Tumiwa, thank you very much Pak Fabi, from IESR, and Bapak Septia Buntara Supendi from ASEAN Center for Energy. Thank you for joining us, and of course, distinguished ladies and gentlemen who are attending here, offline or online through Zoom. And for the start, I would like to extend the context of the meeting today. Energy transition in Indonesia, a just energy transition and financing. So we have observed that the government of Indonesia commit a bold commitment. Just recently, we appreciate the enhancement of the national determined contributions, moving the target of Indonesia emission reduction from 29% to 31.2% with our self-efforts. And the net zero emission pathway has also been set up, developed by the government. The question remains, what can we do as a country, as a multi-stakeholders, to participate into the successful and a just, affordable energy transition? With that context, UNDP jointly with Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources hold today discussion to share the government agenda and also questioning further on how could we contribute, different associations, different stakeholders, private sector, CSO, academia, the multilateral agencies or development partners, how can we hold hand in hand to support the government achieving the targets? How can we finance it? How the private sector can play leading the role, knowing that the amount of investment required for the energy transition is super high. We also know that there are many offers comes to Indonesia for the financing support. Is it sufficient? Is it sufficient, or is there any other scheme that Indonesia can propose? What about the carbon pricing regulation? How that tally to support the energy transition process? Inclusiveness. There is another issue that we would like also to bring on the table, that with the spirit of no one left behind, that we also believe the government of Indonesia is supporting that principle. The energy transition will have opportunities for everyone, manage the risk well, so then we can achieve the target successfully. So that's the topic that we would like to discuss, elaborate today with our distinguished keynote speakers, and also the guidance from the minister and the opinion from Ibu Kani Wignaraja to go further of today's discussion. Without further ado, I would like to invite His Excellency, Minister Arifin Tasrif, to deliver the opening remark. The floor is yours, Pak. Thank you.
Booster number 3. The Honorable Ibu Kani Winaraja, the UN Assistant Administrator and UNDP Regional Director Bureau for Asia and Pacific, my familiar face friend here, Ibu Sinta, Bapak Simo Murasang, Pak David, the renewable energy man, Fabi Tumewa, And Pak Surya Dharma, the former METI chairman. I'm happy today to join this roundtable discussion to meet with you. I also would like to convey my... It's working, yeah? Thanks to Ibu Kani Wignaraja to organize these things, and then thanks for the support from UNDP. So, by listening the title of the today roundtable discussion, a just energy transition and financing, it is really relevant with what we are planning right now. Energy transition is the key to enable sustainable development and improving climate change. Therefore, G20 Indonesia presidency, we set 3 priorities in order to support this, so, such as securing energy accessibility, scaling up smart and clean energy technology, and advancing energy financing. In September, during the Energy Transition Ministerial meeting, we reached an agreement to endorse the Bali Compact, which consists of 9 voluntarily principles to accelerate clean, sustainable, just, affordable, and inclusive energy transitions in accordance with national circumstances and priorities. G20 countries will boost clean energy investment and financial flows, particularly for developing countries, to accelerate energy transitions. So we support energy sector's actions for improving inclusive investment through strengthening project pipelines, enhancing policy, and preparing high-quality bankable projects. We urge further dialogue and action among investors, multilateral development banks, financial institutions, and policymakers to enhance collaboration in identifying innovative financing options. We, Indonesia, we already set target to reach the net zero emission by 2060. And then we prepare such kind of milestone plan every 5 years in order to create such kind of pathway how to do that. So we rely our energy, renewable energy, come from the solar, hydro, geothermal, hydrogen, even we consider nuclear. But we still have another things, such as marine energy, which is very useful in case we can develop this in our regional area. Yeah, you know that we are archipelagic country. We have 16,000 islands. We still have many villages that we have to facilitate. We have to support them with the electricity. This kind of program will not be happen in case we don't have the same vision. We cannot collaborate. So we need the collaboration and the support, especially from the countries which is already far in front of us. Well, in order to reach this target net zero emission by 2060, we need a huge financing. We predict about $1 trillion to be available by up to 2060. This is just to accommodate the 600 to 700 gigawatt new power plant coming from renewable energy, and also the infrastructures to support this program. Currently, we have a problem. We are facing such kind of a challenge. I mean, I'm not telling about problem, which is the over capacity of our existing power plant. So we try to prepare such kind of plan, program, how to increase the demand, how to build the infrastructures. And then, of course, we need support from technological side and also from financial side. We are increasing our target of NDC from 29 to 31.2. Yeah. This is our ambition to be reached by 2030. But it will be happen, yeah, in case we can work together. Well, we thanks for the ADB initiative for the studying the possibility of early retirement of our existing old coal-fired power plant, yeah, in order to allow us to bring renewable into our system and to reduce the emission. Some countries already have benefit from the energy transition to drive sustainable economic growth. But other countries, including Indonesia, we need policy breakthroughs, financial support, and then technology partnership. So today initiative, I hope that we can find such kind of good solution between Indonesia, UNDP, and other partners. Indonesia is very serious, yeah, to try to meet their target, reducing the emission. We already issue the presidential regulation regarding the renewable energy tariff. Currently, we are preparing the law of renewable energy, which we hope we can launch within this year. So we realize that there are many efforts we must make to achieve successful energy transition. We hope this forum can revolve around the overall enabling framework for implementing a clean energy transition and achieving net zero emission. Again, thank you very much for UNDP and all friends here, you know, who are initiating this kind of meeting, roundtable discussion. We hope the fruitful result can be produced after the meeting. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pak Menteri, for the opening remarks. We need the same vision, we need collaboration. Very well taken, Pak Menteri, and that's why we have different actors here in this very morning. I would like to further invite Ibu Kani Wignaraja to deliver her opening remarks. Please, Bu.
Thank you very much, and Excellency Pak Arifin, it is so good to be here with you, and very much appreciated those frank and very pragmatic opening comments, Excellency, that you put on the table, and I know there are many distinguished participants here who I'm sure will add to this debate. And for UNDP, it is a real pleasure and a privilege to be a part of an ongoing conversation, but I hope also this morning that we are able to nudge some of these ideas further forward. I know many of you, including His Excellency, have been putting some of these issues on the table, and to take it up at a national level, but also in regional forum and in global forum, not least at the upcoming COP 27, I think is going to be critical for how much of this can be realized in the near future. I'm not talking 30, 50, 100 years from now. We have no idea what will remain of this earth if we slow down that commitment and the determination to see a change in the energy mix. And I know there's a lot of courage around the table here and in Indonesia, and the minister referred to the presidential regulation, but also I have been it has been an impressive leadership in the G20 on this topic. And I hope, even though that baton is handed over, that Indonesia's voice in the G20 will remain a very strong one on the need for acceleration of the energy transition. Otherwise, we tend to talk about a transition that could go on for decades and decades, by which time we will dig ourselves into such a big hole, it's hard to come out of it. Now, the transition itself, the energy transition, and it has to be, obviously, it is from one day to another. You can't shift from one energy source to another one. It will be a blended mix for a while, and then each country will have to look at how that mix, including on the renewables, really makes sense for that country context. And often, it could also be for countries that are significantly reliant on energy sources from outside its borders, will be a sub-regional collaboration. And I have to say it's interesting that both COVID, the pandemic, as well as the war in Ukraine have completely shifted the way we think of energy security. And this issue linked also very tightly to the issue of food security. Is something that is a new kind of or return to thinking on human security that leaders of every country are grappling with right now. So it's not as easy as maybe it was a decade ago to say, well, if we need it, we'll import it, because these supply chains have been broken and caused significant hurt and despair to so many in our region. Now, the minister put out 2 or 3 very key points which I want to emphasize or reiterate. First is, where will the money come from and what is the cost of that money? And this is where it is a mix of old instruments and new instruments, and it is very good to see development partners, the MDBs, trying to really grapple with this. Because at the end of the day, we can keep talking about an energy transition, but if there isn't a transition in the way that global financing is available for much of the world, it is hollow. And I must say, I'm in the countries I've visited in the recent past, and now here, it is very good to see investment that is looking at new, innovative ways in which to address this. And we will hear also from ADB on their way of looking at the buyback of some of otherwise what will be long stranded assets that hangs very hard on a country's fiscal space, not allowing it to breathe new, fresh funds into the renewable equation. The second is this matter of technology. And we know that for the countries of the South, this is a big issue. They will take it very strongly into COP27. But both the transfer of technology, the cost of technology, and capacities to really grow capabilities in introducing new technology is going to be a critical part of the way this transition happens. And I was just speaking with the minister before we came in on, for example, on transportation industry here. This then also goes to construction, to agriculture, and other sectors where new technologies must ease the way into a new energy mix that reduces carbon emissions and our footprint in these areas. So in each country, the priority sectors, and it would be very interesting to hear from you where you feel the stubbornness still exists in some sectors. Is it a policy regulation issue? Is it a incentives issue? Is it a political will issue? Or is it a fiscal space issue that really holds back the acceleration in particular sectors of the country? And Indonesia is a good example, given its size and scale, of how this is being managed. And many countries in our region are looking to the leadership of Indonesia, not just in the G20, but in upcoming leadership of ASEAN, in the AIS forum, to make this happen. My last point would be that we often forget a key part of who this transition matters to most. We talk to governments, we talk to big business, to the electric companies, to the investors. But at the end of the day, it hits the most vulnerable households the hardest. They're the ones who are often in the dark, quite literally, and need much more. So saying, well, you can't burn firewood, you can't use coal, to folks who cannot afford anything else and who have no options and have not been asked, this is not a viable conversation without that mix. So again, from UNDP, our interest in the discussion is also to bring a lot of that feedback and engagement at the subnational level, into national fora, into regional, and then into global fora, to see what makes for an optimal mix of energy, what are the incentives that could support the poorest vulnerable households, manage the transition themselves, and then where energy security converts into human security and human development. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Kani Wignaraja, to remind us that energy transition should be everyone's discussion, that everyone should contribute to the discussion on how we are going to transition the energy in Indonesia. Thank you very much for that reminder, and I think we are all agree in this room with that statement. His Excellency, Bapak Arifin Tasrif and Ibu Kani, thank you for the opening remarks. And I would like to further continue with the keynote discussion. Because of Pak Menteri have another event to attend. Thank you very much, Pak Menteri, for your time. I would like to invite Bapak Rida Mulyana, tapi boleh minum dulu kok Pak, nggak apa-apa. Bapak Rida Mulyana, Secretary General, Indonesia Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources. We would like to invite you, Pak, to deliver your key points. We heard together about the guidance and the points to take forward from His Excellency and also from Ibu Kani. So we'd like to hear from you. What does it mean, the energy transition for Indonesia? What will we do as a country after the Bali Compact, after the NDC is enhanced and the NZE pathway is delivered? So we would like to listen to your key points, to share with us what is the strategy from the government of Indonesia regarding the energy transition to achieve a just, affordable energy transition. Time is yours. Expectedly within 10 minutes will be appreciated. Thank you, Pak.
Terima kasih Ibu Rara. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Excellencies, Ibu Kani, distinguished speaker, distinguished participant, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to share some key points regarding G20 ETWG result and what it means for Indonesia energy transition agenda in achieving both NDC and net zero emission target. G20 Indonesia presidency has set 3 priorities as mentioned by our minister in energy transition, namely securing energy accessibility, scaling up smart and clean energy technology, and the last one is advancing energy financing. As said by the minister, in September 2022, the ATMM or Energy Transition Ministerial Meeting has reached several commitments such as improving energy access, especially for clean cooking, as mentioned by Ibu Kani, and electricity with a modern energy minimum requirement, as well as developing regional interconnectivity, promoting and invest in clean, safe, low emission and sustainable technology, as well as improving inclusive investment. The G20 countries also endorsed the Bali Compact. This is, I think, a very important achievement among working group. This is one of our deliverable thing, I guess, which consists of 9 voluntary principles for accelerating clean, sustainable, just, affordable, and inclusive energy transition to ensure smooth and effective transition in accordance with national circumstances and priorities. G20 countries reaffirm the commitment to the full and effective implementation of the UNFCCC and the Paris Agreement, of course, in light of different national circumstances, and acknowledge the key relevant to achieve global net zero emission or carbon neutrality by or around mid-century, with different approaches and the time frame announced by various countries. In case of Indonesia, we committed to the Paris Agreement by implementing nationally determined contribution in reducing greenhouse gas emission by 29% or 41% with international support. Energy sector is expected to contribute emission reducing around 359 up to 446 million ton of CO2 equivalent by 2030. In 2021, I'd like to share with you, Indonesia succeeded in reducing greenhouse gas emission from the energy sector itself by 70 million ton CO2 equivalent, mainly through the development of new and renewable energy efficiency implementation, low carbon fuel utilization, and of course, post-mining reclamation. Indonesia committed to transitioning its current developing pathway toward energy transition to achieve net zero emission by 2060 or sooner through several strategies, which is also in line with G20 commitment as mentioned by Minister. Among other, I'd like to elaborate on the supply side through massive development of new and renewable energy, gradual retirement of fossil power plant, as well as utilization of low emission technology such as CCS or CCUS technology. On the demand side, through the utilization of electric stove, battery electric vehicle, biofuel, city gas, application of energy management, as well as the implementation of the minimum energy performance standard. We aim to develop 700 gigawatt of renewable energy coming from solar, hydro, wind, bioenergy, ocean energy, geothermal, as well as hydrogen and nuclear. For nuclear itself, nuclear power plant will operate in around 2039, while the hydrogen will be produced from renewable power plant, or we call it as the green hydrogen, starting in 2031, and it will be used for the non-power generating sector, such as transportation and industry. Starting in 2030, I'd like to share with you the important policy from the government of Indonesia. There will be no additional coal-fired power plant, and the last one will be terminated automatically by 2058. We will use our natural gas resources to support our energy transition. So we still need fossil-based fuel, especially the gas one. Additionally, Indonesia is planning to build super grid to ramp up renewable energy development and improving interconnection while also maintaining the electrical system stability and security. It will open up an opportunity to export electricity to other ASEAN countries by building the Asian power grid. To support the fast and effective transition to clean energy, as Pak Menteri mentioned, the Indonesia need investment up to $1 trillion by 2060 and almost $995 billion needed to build the energy generation, and the rest is for the transmission. With limited public fund, resources from international institutions and private investment are urgently needed, not only for the retirement of the coal-fired power plant, but also for financing the construction of renewable energy power plant to replace the coal-fired power plant. We also need additional funds to develop clean energy technology, provide training to enable workers to shift jobs from mining to renewable energy, as well as social protection measures to provide better and conducive renewable energy investment. As Pak Menteri said, the government has already stipulated presidential regulation concerning acceleration of renewable energy development for electricity supply that enable competitive price for renewable energy through transparent procurement mechanism and providing government support from related ministry. Additionally, we also provide incentives such as tax allowance, import duty facilities, and also tax holiday. In addition, the new energy and renewable energy bill or law is currently being drafted. The bill will provide legal certainty, strengthen institution and governance, create and conducive investment climate, and increase renewable energy utilization for industrial development and also for the national economic growth. I do hope sincerely that this forum will be useful avenue in improving our energy system and strengthen collaboration in facing various challenges in achieving energy transition and net zero emission target. Thank you. Back to you, Mbak Rara.
Thank you very much, Pak Rida Mulyana. It was a disclosure of the net zero emission pathway. We listened to a gradual strategy for the phase down. There's also an opportunities of the new technology, of the new investment. So that will be really helpful, Pak Rida, if that NZE pathway we can put in the big front page of the national newspapers. So we can position ourselves where we can contribute. Thank you very much, Pak Rida, very timely 10 minutes. I would like to invite our second keynote speaker, Bapak Nori Masa, Bapak Nori from UNDP, Resident Representative UNDP Indonesia. Listening to Pak Rida, Pak Nori, I would like to invite you to share how do you think that UNDP, it was invited by Pak Rida as well, can position the institution to support effectively the energy transition plan of Indonesia. Time's yours, 10 minutes appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Ibu Rara. Good morning, everyone. To answer that question, I think it's important that we first recall, as the Minister mentioned, that we recall the government's effort to enhance the NDC commitments. As you recall, the government submitted its enhanced NDCs only a few weeks ago to show higher commitment to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, from 29% unconditional to 31.89%, and from 41% with international assistance to 43.20%. Energy sector's share of contribution towards NDCs also rose from 11% to 12.5%. The increase in the NDC targets will create more demand to deploy renewable energy and to increase energy efficiency. Secondly, there are three central conditions that can drive energy transition agenda here in Indonesia. First point, petroleum consumption has been higher than production for the past 2 decades, currently almost double the amount of production. So this creates pressure to look for alternative sources of energy to reduce the cost of fuel import. Second point, there are high level of greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuel utilization for power, transport, and industry sectors, and the country is heavily dependent on fossil fuels as the backbone of the country's energy supply. Fossil fuels still dominate primary energy mix in Indonesia. An abrupt retirement may cause challenge to energy security. And thirdly, renewable energy potential is very high, but the utilization rate is still at a very low 2%. So the logical conclusion of all these is very clear. There is a need for a concerted effort to gradually but urgently reduce the use of fossil fuel, while at the same time developing viable renewable energy projects and decarbonize transport, industry, and commercial sectors. It is somehow ironical, as I think Kani was referring to, that the current global crisis that's causing the hike in the energy price appears to be giving impetus for energy transition as fuel importing countries work on their resilience by depending less on the imported fossil fuels. This being said, the issues of energy security, affordability, and use of wide range of low-emission options in accelerating energy transition should be considered. We recall that these are the very issues highlighted in the Bali Compact that came out from the G20 Energy Transition Working Group. Once the strategy for energy transition is settled, the next question is how to finance the plan. It is estimated that $1 trillion must be invested by 2060 for the decommissioning of fossil fuel power plants and introduce renewable energy in this country. And it is clear that the state budget will not be sufficient to cover this requirement. Presidential regulations on carbon economic values, as well as on acceleration of renewable energy, are expected to provide solid bases to address this challenge. It's also important that the socio-economic impact of the energy transition is addressed. Also, wide development of renewable energy itself depends on extractive mining of key materials for renewable energy technologies such as nickel, cobalt, and rare earth. ADB's study on socio-economic impact assessment of coal-fired power plants retirement plan shows that retiring 21 units of coal-fired power plant would result in the reduced government revenue from tax and a loss of at least 15,000 jobs, affecting women and the vulnerable in a variable manner. These uncertainties make it important to consult with the stakeholders and to take necessary measures such as targeted vocational skills training, SME development along the changing value chains, and provision of social safety net for directly affected population to ease the pain of the transition. So, your question, Ibu Rara, what can UNDP offer in this context? At the risk of oversimplifying our assistance from UNDP, I can say that UNDP's effort has focused on 4 areas. First, stimulating the retirement of brown energy. Second, creating conducive environment to promote the use of renewable energy. Third, leveraging financing. And fourth, promoting just transition. First, on the renewable reduction of brown energy, we have worked with the Ministry of Finance to develop the carbon tax implementation roadmap based on our earlier technical assistance that led to the government's decision to introduce the carbon tax for coal-fired power plant sector at $2.1 per ton. We also work with the Ministry of Energy to develop the roadmap for emissions cap. And since carbon tax and emissions cap are meant to penalize the use of fossil energy and promote carbon trade, we support the Ministry of Environment to introduce a system of carbon credit certification and registry. We welcome the ongoing effort around the energy transition mechanism, which in our view is a positive disruption to accelerate the decarbonization process. And as such, we work with PTSMI to close some analytical gaps, including the study on fiscal impact of the ETM. Secondly, on the promotion of renewable energy, we have worked again with PTSMI to increase bankability of renewable energy projects. And we now collaborate with Kadin, Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to assist its member companies to implement their net zero commitments, including their ability to undertake feasibility studies for introducing renewable energy technologies and monitor and report on the impact. In parallel, we established Sustainable Energy Fund within Indonesia Environment Fund under the Ministry of Finance that provides cash incentives to introduce PV rooftops for households and small businesses. And at the same time, we work on demonstration projects, the commercialization of new climate technologies such as EV, the electric vehicle, and green hydrogen. Thirdly, we continue to spearhead our support on innovative climate and SDG financing, which includes our collaboration with the Ministry of Finance that led to the issuance of the world's first sovereign green sukuk, the Islamic bond, that has leveraged to date $5.8 billion. We have since then supported the introduction of government's securities framework, issuance of the SDG bond last year, and launching of the blue financing strategy by the Coordinating Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Investment only yesterday, and now support the effort of issuing blue bond by 2024. We also work on the SME's absorptive capacities, for example, through our collaboration with ADB on Blue Finance Accelerator. Finally, we are increasing our effort to facilitate convening of stakeholders in the regions directly affected by the Energy Transition Plan to ensure inclusiveness in the process and social environmental safeguarding. We believe that energy transition should not leave behind those communities living in lack of modern energy. Therefore, energy transition strategies should include plans on how to utilize clean energy sources for access to electricity and clean cooking in remote areas. UNDP has established the Sustainable Energy Hub at our headquarters, which offers support in the development of viable business models for mini-grid, for example, which is highly relevant for Indonesia's archipelagic conditions. So maybe I stop here. 9 minutes. Thank you.
Very timely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Pak Nori. So, as part of UNDP, our humble contribution, of course, that cannot be done without the collaboration with all the government partners and also the stakeholders in Indonesia. Gradually, but urgently. So I think that's echoing the also message, key points from Pak Rida. Abrupt energy transition in Indonesia can cause a critical problem, considering the dependency of the country. But yet, Indonesia needs to be bold with the strategy on how the country should transition it. Message on how the energy transition should also include the discussion of use of the clean energy for improving access to electricity. That's valid for Indonesia. We have 17,000 islands. And how that discussion of providing access to electricity should be part of the bigger discussion on the energy transition as well. Thank you, Pak Nori, for the keynotes and also the intervention. Next, I would like to invite Ibu Laksmi Dewanti. We have Ibu Laksmi online. Can we switch to Zoom, please? Ibu Laksmi Dewanti, Director General for Climate Change from Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Selamat pagi. Good morning, Ibu Laksmi. How are you?
Good morning, Mbak Lara. I'm fine. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for participating and give the key points for us here, Ibu. It's very important, especially congratulations for the submission of our enhanced NDC in the 23rd of September. So we looking forward to support the achieving of those targets. I would like to invite Ibu for the key points. We listened from the previous one about how can we finance $1 trillion will be required by 2060. In addition to the offer support, funding support from the other countries, Indonesia is also have a capacity to mobilize the resources, put the scheme in place. And carbon pricing, or the value, the economic value of carbon, is one of the leading scheme that's being introduced by the government of Indonesia. Would like to have your information, the key points about that, Ibu, on how the carbon pricing or the economic value of carbon can support the energy transition. Floor is yours, 10 minutes appreciated. Please, Ibu Laksmi. Thank you.
Thank you, Mbak Rara. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May the peace, mercy, and blessing of Allah upon us. Ibu Kani Raja, Assistant Secretary General, Director of Regional Bureau of Asia and the Pacific, UNDP, Bapak Nori Masa, UNDP Representative Indonesia, Bapak Rida Mulyana, Secretary General of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Ibu Sinta Kamdani, other resource person and speakers, distinguished participants of a Just Energy Transition and Financing Forum. Indeed, it is my honor to be here to contribute to the timely, very interesting and timely discussion. As we all know that the moment of energy transition in Indonesia, it's crucially important not only for achieving the NDC, but to ensure the sustainability of our development, national development. And let me also use this opportunity to appreciate all the stakeholders, speakers, participants enjoying this very important event. And gratitude to the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources and the UNDP Indonesia for organizing this such international forum. Regarding the questions that has just put forward by Ibu Rara, I just would like to say that in the national context, Indonesia, as we all know, has set a commitment target for reducing national greenhouse gas emission in the context of the nationally determined contributions. And originally, our target was 29% with unconditional target with our national effort, and targeting emission reduction further to 41% with international support compared to the business as usual baseline by 2030. And thank you very much for acknowledging our enhanced NDC. Indeed, back in September 23rd, Indonesia has submitted a document so-called Enhanced Nationally Determined Contribution, which will achieve which reflect enhanced target of our emission reductions. So we will achieve, instead of 29%, we will achieve 31.89% from BAU is a unconditional target, and up to 43.2% with international assistance. This enhanced NDC is the transition towards Indonesia's second NDC, which will be aligned with the long-term low carbon and climate resilience strategy, or LTS-LCCR 2050, with a vision to achieve a net zero emission by 2060 or sooner in Indonesia. So moreover, the enhanced NDC provide updates on the reflect the current national context, clear milestone along the national development for period of 2020-2025. Indeed, to implement NDC at the national level, Indonesia also developed a long-term strategy on low carbon and climate resilience 2050, as I mentioned before, as a guide to implementing climate change mitigation and adaptation action to achieve the net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. So as a consequence, Indonesia need to develop strategy, financial mechanisms, and various modalities and the way to support achievement of the target. So to achieve the NDC target, Indonesia has developed numbers of policies and regulations, including the regulations of the President's Regulations number 98 of 2021. The regulations that regarding the implementation of carbon pricing to achieve nationally determined contribution target and to manage over greenhouse gas emission in the national development context. This regulation is part of our commitment in ensuring successful of NDC implementation through mobilizations of climate finance and including the innovative financing. As we all aware that in terms of the climate finance, we have 4 strategies. The first strategy is to strengthen our fiscal capacity, including by having the climate budget tagging. The second strategy is to make the climate-related action, both mitigation and adaptation, as attractive as possible to the investors. The third strategy is to develop various innovative financial mechanisms, including green sukuk, blended finance, and as well as the establishment of Indonesian Environmental Fund back in 2019. And we also need to increase our capacity to access various global sources of funds. Carbon pricing is part of our initiative in making and providing a set of innovative financial mechanisms to support our NDC's implementation. In light of this carbon market and carbon pricing, we believe it must be part of the effort to address the climate change issues, especially in Indonesia. The regulations of carbon pricing that has been issued is in order to implement a carbon economy ecosystem that need to be transparent, integrity, inclusive, and fair. As it is stated by Bapak Presiden Joko Widodo in the national statement during the high-level segment of COP26 UNFCCC back in November last year in Glasgow. The regulations of the carbon pricing is highlighting on how carbon pricing can be carried out through various mechanisms of carbon pricing, namely carbon trading, including cap and trade between two businesses actors, emission offset or carbon offset, in form of effort to absorb carbon in amount of emission they produce, result-based payment mechanisms, levy or carbon taxations, and we may also implement combinations of or new scheme based on our methodology and our science development. So in this occasion, we are hoping to have more stronger collaboration with stakeholders as international financial institutions, business, and other various stakeholders. Excellencies and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, carbon pricing will be one of the instruments to assist us or to ensure us that reducing the greenhouse gas emission in Indonesia will be achieved. In addition, the carbon pricing is envisioned to be a mechanism that makes climate change adaptation and mitigation actions more effective, efficient, inclusive, transparent, accountable, and fair. The implementers of the carbon pricing in terms of the Perpres 98/2021, it's various from ministries and agencies, local government, business actors, and include the community. So, and all the stakeholders, it's in line and aligned with our NDC roadmap, which strongly emphasized the involvement of various non-party stakeholders. NDC achievement per sector, emission limit, to develop science and technology and sector capacity will be part of our support policies in ensuring the carbon pricing implementation will be the effective one to support the NDC's achievement. Carbon trading as one of the carbon pricing instrument is a market-based mechanism to reduce the greenhouse gas emission through buying and selling of carbon units. So carbon trading can be carried out domestically or abroad, directly or through the carbon exchange, and there will be various guidelines to ensure that this arrangement will be effectively implemented. The existing of carbon trading, as we all aware, we already have so-called voluntary carbon trading or carbon market. Under the regulation, we will have the transition period to adjust and to ensure that the existing carbon market will be aligned and in line with the existing regulation, as well as align with the ongoing discussion under UNFCCC, namely Article 6. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, towards my point and my remarks, we would like to again reiterate that Indonesia's commitment to achieve the NDC target, including the implementation of carbon pricing, is important. And the participation and active engagement of the stakeholders is crucially a requirement for the successful of implementation of carbon pricing in Indonesia. We also hope that the regulations giving opportunities for all businesses and stakeholders to get the support on the financial aspect to transform their action to become more sustainable business, and at the time it's on achieving the goals to tackle the climate change. So upon that note, I wish that today's event with various topic of discussion would bring us to a stronger cooperations and effective collaborations among stakeholders in implementation of the carbon pricing, especially to ensure the NDC's target achievement in Indonesia. So I thank you, and back to you, Ibu Rara. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you very much, Ibu Laksmi, for sharing with us what is the policies and the schemes, instruments that put in place by the government to drive the climate change mitigation and adaptation. So that leads actually very timely, Ibu Sinta Kamdani. Thank you very much, Ibu Laksmi. Very timely, Ibu Sinta Kamdani, Vice Chairperson of Indonesian Chambers of Commerce, Chairperson of the B20. How do you take this, Bu? Is it an opportunity or is it something that is not attractive at all for the private sector to join? Please, Bu.
Thank you very much, Rara. And I would like to first appreciate UNDP for conducting this roundtable. I've always applaud, the work that UNDP has done in Indonesia. Ibu Kania, I think Kadin has worked with UNDP for quite some time right now. And despite all the challenges that we face and stressful conditions, I think always having the discussion and solution, I think, ways, alternative ways have always been good for us to push ourselves. And, the first thing is when government, of course, I applaud my government to enhance their NDC target. But I always question in the private sector is, oh my God, how is this going to, that means, because the execution is with us. So at the end, in order to reach that target, we have to ensure, all businesses here have to ensure that we will be able to deliver, because target is only target, strategy is only strategy on paper. If we cannot execute it, what are we going to do? So I hope, today I've been asked to also talk about decarbonization, and yes, we have worked collaboratively with many sectors on how they can transition to be more greener, to more just and orderly energy transitions. And you're right, we're talking about many industries. We're not talking about just power generation, but we're talking about many industries that will be impacted. And I think one thing that we shared, and I think these businesses also share with UNDP, is to have the vision of leaving nobody behind. And I think this is very important, how we can deliver a sustainable energy access by leaving nobody behind. And I think we've seen that approximately 1/4 of the world GDP and employment are produced by industry, which also account for 28% of the greenhouse gas emission, and is expected to directly generate 9.4 gigaton of CO2 by 2021. So 1/4 of all emissions worldwide. So since decarbonization is so important to industry, speeding up its implementation, I think in the private sector would require also an on-purpose cooperative effort from all involved parties. Therefore, I believe that we in the private sector played a very crucial role in limiting this, global temperature rise through innovation. And I think innovation is really the key word, and of course, the financing. I think the broad use of innovative technology and process can be made easier to reduce the amount of carbon emission produced by the industrial sector. But I would like to highlight perhaps 5 different methods in which I think the private sector may help to decarbonize. I think the first is improving, of course, our energy efficiency. Second is switching to renewable energy sources, and we all know that it has its own challenges. The third, developing low carbon products and services. The fourth is offsetting emission through carbon capture and storage or other mitigation measures. And the fifth is sustainable mobilities, by adopting a low carbon mix for new, more sustainable mobility solution. And actually government also now are pushing through the use of electric vehicle. We are transitioning, even the two-wheelers now. I heard that it will be, we have a subsidy on transition. So this is all great, I think, initiative also coming out from the government. I think each solution, of course, present possibilities. To fulfill the Paris Agreement aims, industry must act in all aspects, and I think industrial CO2 emission will be reduced to 7 gigaton, and 70 to 80% of the decarbonization expenditure will be in cheaper technology, hopefully, and current than the current intensive alternative. So I think the target of 2030, something that we need to look into. I always say that this is a difficult task. Energy efficiency even is not easy. Why? Of course, it will also require commitment and investment. And when I ask companies, they will say, yes, we commit. Of course, we want to do this, right? But will they be willing to put in their money on the table? And I think this is something that we have to all very much look into. I remember our conversation with Pak Luhut and the distinguished Mr. John Kerry. Pak Luhut said, yes, Indonesia is very committed, but you have to help support us with the financing. Are you ready to give us the money, right? And I think many of the discussion have taken place. So of course we can't do this alone, and I think UNDP, I also applaud your initiative. I think you said that you pledged to catalyze partnership, knowledge, innovation, finance to increase energy access to 500 million more people by 2024. So amazing. And I think the Sustainable Energy Hub definitely, and many of the work that Nogima-san has shared will definitely help us. Kadin and of course has initiative, the government and business community that encourage the use of also funding from multilateral banks, foreign governments, and non-profit organizations to boost the amount of this investment we call to support the greener global transformation. I would like to also take this opportunity perhaps to, if you don't mind, to share a little bit what we're doing in the B20 context. So as you know, Kadin has been tasked to organize B20 this year, which is the business engagement group of the G20. And you know, in form like this, as a host, we also want to show our leadership. And I think this is important as an emerging economy, that we know that there are already initiatives that we are leading off, and how the big economies are also looking on the agenda of this emerging economy on the energy transition. So let me also share some of the work that B20 has been discussing in the context of these years. And I would like to just share some slides. The first slide, we can see here that the B20 Indonesia has comprehensively covered the most pressing issues related to energy, sustainability, and climate, as well as mitigate their potential impact that might give significant contribution to our target of energy ambition. So the first is increasing the social cost of global energy. I think this is an issue. Global primary energy consumption increased by 42% from 2000 to 2019. Greenhouse gas emission from energy use accounted for 73% of global emission in 2019, which is about 43% increase compared to 2000. I think this is something that we need to highlight. And the world has lost $1.65 trillion to the social costs of the CO2 emission during that period. The second is the workforce. I think we have to underline the workforce that will be left behind by the energy transition. I think the transition will create 24 million jobs, it says, worldwide by 2030, but 6 million jobs will also be lost. And the 18 million job boost will come primarily from government action and implementation plans. To ensure a just transition for the workforce negatively impacted by the transition, there needs to be actively capacity building around sustainable energy, and we are talking about this, shift of job and the reskilling, upskilling. This is all very important when we talk about partly the just transition. How is this going to impact the workforce? The third is the lack of access to electricity. I think in 2019, 759 million people globally had no access to electricity. And I think if nothing is done to fix this, 660 million people will still have no access. So one solution is to accelerate the deployment of integrated electricity access solution, including off-grid solutions with community participations and grid-based electrification. I think this is the three main issues that we believe that we discuss in the B20 that we need to highlight. So In the next slide, I think we have addressed these issues through months of discussion, and in the next slide, you can see that 3 main policy recommendations emphasize the key solution that we also advocate to the G20 government, also in the working group. And this comprise of first, how to enhance global cooperation on accelerating the transition to sustainable energy use by reducing the carbon intensity of energy through multiple pathway. The second is the ensuring a just, orderly, and affordable transition use across developed and developing countries. And the third is to enhance cooperation on increasing consumer level access and ability to consume clean and modern energy. So this is the main 3 policy recommendations that are submitted. Of course, all the proposed sub-policies are included, and this will be submitted to the government in next month. I think we also look into, of course, the financing aspect, and we are very supportive on the initiative made by the government and business that promote the use of catalytic capital from multilateral banks, foreign government, and philanthropic organizations to increase the investment allocated for the global change. So later I will touch a little bit on what our some of our proposal on the blended finance aspect. But this policy recommendation in the next slide, you can see that it doesn't stand alone. I think it requires the acceleration across all the task forces. As you know, we have 6 task forces and 1 action council in the B20. So the 3 key focus area from the ESC also echo and similar key messages from the other task forces, especially those regarding accelerating the sustainable energy transition and providing this just transition. So, for example, I think the next slide, you can see that in the Finance and Infrastructure Task Force, the B20 has agreed to improve access to green finance scheme, especially for financing green infrastructure. And we have in this task force many of the leading financial institutions from the business, from the private sectors. And in this particular task force, we have also talked about the energy transition mechanism and how to retire, of course, the coal power generation, going into renewable renewable energy and so forth. And I think Indonesia in B20 this year is going to have also working with supporting the government and working on the energy transition mechanism, will have a specific pledge in terms of the commitment from the private sectors of Indonesia on the IPP, on retirement of coal, and also on the model of how this is going to work, having the fund available to support this aspect. In the Trade and Investment Task Force, the B20 community has also agreed to help promote a green economy, especially we talk about carbon market. Yes, this is something very specific that also will come out in our legacy. And in the future of work and education, we agreed to support the improvement of worker ability to participate in the shift toward green energy. And in the integrity and compliance, this is very important also. We support the adoption of ESG reporting in business. So we'll have, we're promoting the standardization on ESG reporting following the international standard. And this was specific, a specific outcome from this task force as well. Now, I just mentioned all the B20 policy recommendation, but in actuality, what is very important this year is what we call the legacy projects. If you see next, what's the legacy projects? The legacy projects are basically the long-lasting projects going even beyond Indonesia presidency. And this is not just a one-time initiative. And this is what our government wants to have a more concrete and actionable result. And I would like to highlight the legacy that particularly support this issue today. One is the Carbon Center of Excellence. And what is this? It is a platform that will enable the growth of carbon trading through one center of excellence that provide a carbon knowledge repository and enable sharing of best practices. So it's a knowledge hub, it's a practice hub, and this B20 Carbon Center of Excellence will be equipped with various learning modules and carbon training that are tailored to all expertise level. We're working right now, it will be housed by Bloomberg, and what would this happen is we already have commitment on certain businesses and companies that will support this effort, and it will be continue on also. I just came back from India yesterday, and this is something that will be continue on to the India presidency and also Brazil and moving forward. And on the next one, also if you see, we have also the blended finance global alliance, and I think this is important to have also global blended finance alliance to be supported, and it will be submitted also to the G20 government, and this will entails, I think, a very comprehensive aspect. I think we are many times we talk about financing, what will be, you know, entails, and this multilateral platform is I think a scale linking transition finance with technological and innovation, and a blended structured to support national and international groups. So it has a few components: the finance, the policy, the enterprise, of course, the technology and data. We also have the idea on the human development aspect, and bringing a market also in place. So this is a very integrated proposition, and I think the Global Blended Finance Alliance has been also supported by many government for many countries, and hopefully this is something that can be endorsed in the G20 government. So these are just some work that on the legacy that we are also posing. Again, you know, when we talk about business, I think we always goes back to the basic. What are the solution? What is the right model that can work? And our initiative of the Net Zero Hub, together with I think support from UNDP, is very important, because when we talk about business, we're not talking about just the big corporations. We're also talking about the small medium enterprises, and when they want to reach to the when we talk about reaching net zero before 2060, how SMEs can also be part of it. And I think it's important that we have this Net Zero Hub that will help also SME to reach the target, having its own roadmap of net zero. So we want to be inclusive by bringing all actors, not just the big corporations. And we are proud to say that in next month, in November, we will also have the Net Zero Summit, the first ever Net Zero Summit, and thank you UNDP for supporting us as well. And I think this is important to show globally as well that Indonesia are leading in this effort. And I think businesses in Indonesia are ready to support and ready to work together to make this happen. I would also announce that the B20 Summit will be held on the 13th and 14th of November, right before the G20. And I think this particular topic of energy transition will also be very much highlighted in our summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ibu Sinta Kamdani. It's obvious, business are not stand still. You can see how the legacy project is not the project, it's a platform, it's a movement. So, and the last point that you mentioned, Ibu Sinta, is very important also, how we can involve the small medium enterprises into this discussion and also the process of the transition. That lead us to the last keynote speaker, David Elzinga from the ADB. You have listened the discussion how Indonesia put in place the regulations, how the business, the B20 under Indonesia presidency leadership of the G20 start building up the capacity to take the opportunities. Now, we would like to listen your share about the ADB's energy transition mechanism that also bring in the public and private financing for the energy transition in Indonesia. Some key points on how the scheme would be look like and how would be the actors in Indonesia take the opportunities and also anticipating of the implementation of the ETM. Floor is yours, 10 minutes appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Ibu. Thank you to Assistant Secretary General, UNDP, for welcoming us. It's always great to go last because I get to hear all the interesting things that are going on. And I think that's one of the first points that I want to make. We've, at ADB, together with our partners working on energy transition activities in Indonesia and in the region, we're really just one actor looking at one particular approach on how we can support this broader energy transition. And we've heard about so many other things today. But I will focus on the energy transition mechanism in my few points. We talk about energy transition, and we talk about it by saying the 4 Ps. So people, policy, power, and partnerships. And this is a way that we can articulate this program. And let me start with people. As we look at the transition from fossil fuels and specifically coal to clean energy, we very much have to look at how this impacts the people. And this we're addressing in a couple ways. One is under the banner of what we call a SESA. That's a strategic environmental and social assessment that can look at both the environmental aspects and social aspects that will happen in this transition. We can all, I think, see that using coal power has an impact on the environment, but actually transitioning even to clean energy sources will have impacts. So we do have to find ways to manage that. And as well, the workers and communities that depend on the coal plants for jobs and livelihoods will also see a change. And we heard about some numbers earlier about the, both from Ibu Sinta as well as Nuri-san, that there is opportunity. But still, with change, we have to manage that, do that in an orderly, you highlighted that as well, Ibu Sinta, an orderly fashion to ensure that these people are not only left behind, but that they can manage through this transition. And that's also under the frame of just transition, where we're looking within the ETM program to quantify this, to understand what are these actual changes that are going to happen, and what are the ways that we can mitigate any of the negative impacts. So we're trying to be very deliberate and practical on that. With respect to the policy, it's absolutely encouraging to see the work in Indonesia, the recently released RE Purpose, that really sets the stage both for renewables, but what was exciting to see a position on how to transition away from coal within that renewable energy purpose. I think that really demonstrates the leadership here in Indonesia. Now, the third P, power. So this is where we talk about how we're trying to look at this problem in Indonesia with respect to transitioning from coal to clean energy. And in that respect, we've heard both Bapak Arifin as well as Pak Rida talk about the context of the power sector in Indonesia and the challenges. You know, we often focus on the challenges, but to see the level of power generation and the people being served, the changes over the last 10 and 20 years, that has also been really positive with respect to using coal and other fossil fuels. But now Indonesia has made that commitment to make that change. And so as part of that, retiring coal is one side of the coin, but then also deploying renewables and really seeing how those two can fit together is an important element of the energy transition mechanism. So we see within that, we're looking at private sector plans. How can we use public and private money to refinance and relever those the equity and debt in those plants to allow us to shorten the life of that plant. That's one modality, and what's important about that is this does this in a managed fashion. And that's really important to protect the market and the contractability of power plants within the power sector. That's essential. If that is damaged, that puts at risk the future investments that are needed in the power sector and many other sectors. And as well, by doing it in an orderly fashion, allows us to follow this in a just manner. The other aspect that we're looking at is the plants that are owned by PLN. And in that respect, we're looking at different approaches that can look at a corporate such as PLN that has many plants. And one approach is looking at a sustainability-linked loan. In ADB, we call that a results-based lending. And in that respect, we're able to support the investment in clean energy, so that other side of the coin that's needed, but with disbursement-linked indicators. So basically, key performance indicators that say, if you do X, we can support clean energy with low-cost financing. This provides a way to really incentivize that transition, to accelerate it. So Indonesia is on the pathway. How can we work together to accelerate that that transition from coal to clean energy? And that really brings me to the last P, and I think in a way is almost the most important, and that's partnership. Over the last number of months, since basically the beginning of the year, we have been engaging with ESDM, MOF, BUMN, CMMI, PLN through a focus group discussion series where we've been able to dialogue and say, what is the Indonesian solution for energy transition? And that has been an incredibly rich and, of course, challenging dialogue. This is not an easy thing to do in any country, but Indonesia has really demonstrated its commitment to come up with a plan, and hopefully we'll see that with some announcements in the G20 coming out of that exercise. But these are not the only partners, of course. That's the government side that I highlighted. The private sector, represented by Ibu Sinta today, is a key part of that that is needed within the country and then also internationally, to look at different types of financing that can be used. And one of the key aspects as we talk both within the domestic economy but also internationally is looking at the taxonomy to support accelerated coal retirement. Right now, any investment in coal is a bad thing, and that limits the availability of finance that can help accelerate this transition. That's one of the topics that we're trying to bring forward, is how can we support the broader community to create a framework to say, look, investing in coal to build new coal and expand that, okay, that's not what we want to see on the global stage. But investing to accelerate the retirement, that can be a very positive approach. So how can we support the development of these frameworks so that these investments can be made? And lastly, I want to just highlight again that ADB has been highlighted as one of the leaders of this, but this is not something that we're doing alone within the development community. So today we've heard of the work of UNDP, but of course the World Bank, the bilateral development institutions, and a range of others who are really philanthropies, for example, coming together to really find solutions to this problem. So let me close by just reflecting. Over the last few years, the plans have been made. The regulatory and policy environment has been set out. It's not perfect. but it is moving in a significantly the right direction, and positive changes have been made. So now is the time to take action. And I hope that over the coming months, as part of the G20 and COP27, we can see meaningful first steps along this journey towards a low-carbon Indonesia. Thank you.
Thank you, David. So that shows us that actually we are not alone, that there's also other mechanism from the international community to support Indonesia energy transition. That's echoing all the spirit, the pathway. So we concluded with all the 5 distinguished, amazing keynote speakers with the key points very sharp. I'm actually afraid now to make the key points. Don't put the blame on the moderator. I'm just taking according to the discussion. So there are several takeaways. It gives this morning discussion put us into an optimistic yet challenging. We see the potential risk. We also see the opportunities. And we also see the gaps that may be overlooked during the discussion. So the first pathway is there. Disclosing the pathway to the wider audience, to the wider actors, that will be critical and also beneficial for every actors to put the position and see how they can be part of the discussion and the action. So I'm not joking, but really expecting, Pak Rida, if we see that pathway on the front page of the national newspaper. And then we also reminded that I will put UNDP at the end, not by purpose, Pak Nori. And we also listened that the government has put in place the policy and instruments on how to move forward with our target, the country target, to meet the national determined contributions, the target for the emission reduction. But these policies and instruments is only one way, one instrument. The carbon pricing is one instrument. Government is trying to even innovate more instruments. So the input, the feedback from the actors on what is needed, what would be the scheme, the instrument that will be beneficial for the actors to move forward, that will be a good feedback for the government to align all the initiatives. And in addition to that, Ibu Sinta Kamdani from the business and industry says that energy transition is not only about supply and demand, about power generation only. There is industry, there is a business that actually responsible for the employment and also the emission of the greenhouse gases. So business and industries will be the key players in the energy transition of Indonesia. And for that, the business entities, the business in the B20 initiative has put in place also the initiative, what's so-called legacy projects, to take opportunities on the carbon pricing, on the carbon trading possibility, enhancing the knowledge about how the business can actually participate in the carbon trading, the upcoming, and also move forward with the blended finance alliance. It's a real action. Platform is there, action is to be taken. So that's a bold initiative from the business entity that's actually pushing the agenda of the pathway of the government, move forward. And from the last presentation of the ADB, there's another scheme offered by the international communities that bring in the potential for financing, public and private financing, to decommission, to early retire the fossil fuel, but in the same time, reinvest that to the renewables. This is another opportunity. How we can position, how the country can take these opportunities forward and open the opportunities to other stakeholders to participate. And the last, no one should be left behind in the process of the energy transition in achieving the target of the emission. So the question is valid. How does this energy transition mean for those who does not have the access to the electricity? We are talking about energy transition. Will they still be left behind without the energy access? So how can we address their need also as part of the movement of this energy transition? And as the closing, I echo again, the collaboration is needed, but collaboration cannot be put in place if we don't understand where we are going to move forward and what opportunities and what challenges that we should tackle together. So I think that's my humble keynotes, but I'm sure that everyone is very rich with their own notes. So thank you so much for the 5 keynote speakers, but we will come to the question and answer. But before that, I would like to invite the Bapak Fabi Tumiwa and Septia Buntana Supendi from the ASEAN Center of Energy, responding to the keynotes expressed by the previous speakers. But before that, I think Pak Rida and also Ibu Kani and Pak Norimasa needs to leave the event. Thank you very much, Pak Rida, Ibu Kani, and Pak Nori. And we will come back to you with the recommendation of actions, of course. And also, Ibu Sinta, do you need also to leave? Thank you so much, Ibu Sinta. So the points well taken. Now our discussion is to, I hope Fabi will not have a high voltage of feedback as usual. It will be balanced by Pak Septia. But I think we also need to discuss on what can we do next step. And how is your comment, Mas Fabi, on these 5 keynote speakers?
Thank you, Rara, and thank you for inviting me to this event. Unfortunately, that's the important people has to leave, so I hope it's well recorded and the message can be shared with them.
Yeah.
Well, my name is Fabi Tumiwa. I'm from Institute for Essential Services Reform, a think tank based in Jakarta. But also here, I'm the chairman of Indonesia Solar Energy Associations, or ISE, and I would like to thank UNDP for providing the incentive, the CEF, to support rooftop PV. I think that's a good collaboration. I hope it can be extended with a bigger amount of fund, right? Because it's very important in the context of energy transition in Indonesia. So I would like to start with reflecting our situation today. And I think that reflects how difficult is the energy transitions. So I believe that most of us today now is actually freezing, right? And that's the realities. That energy transition is not easy, but just having stated we have to do energy transitions. Because I do believe that before we transform our energy system, that we have to care about how we use the energy, which we know producing energy is very expensive. Right? But in the last few days, I attended a couple of meetings in a fancy building and hotels like this, and from Monday to Thursday, from morning to evening, I'm freezing. Can you imagine how much energy we have waste and emission because of that? I would like to say to Pak Rida, maybe because of PLN oversupply, then we think that we can consume energy as much as we like. But that's just reflect in this situation how energy transitions will be very, very difficult, because addressing a simple thing like energy efficiency, increasing the temperatures, turn on the light, if we cannot do that simple thing, I think transforming the entire energy system will be a very, very difficult task. But before that, also, I would like to appreciate, on behalf of ISR as well as ISC, I would like to appreciate Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, in particular for the enactment of the Presidential Regulation 112, which we think is very, very important. And I've been working on energy transition since 2018. And I haven't seen that, if we start from 2018, it's very hard to imagine that today government talk about ending fossil fuels, stop building coal-fired power plant, and even, as we have heard, that start to retire some of the coal plants. So that's something that I couldn't imagine back in 2018. So I have to appreciate what the government has done so far. And as it's all in the regulation and policy, we are looking toward the implementation, especially in terms of renewables. We would like to see that PLN will do more frequent auction, which is, I think, very, very important to test that, whether that regulation work or not. But let me also make the comment on this keynote speech, which I think, when it comes to energy transition, there is three main points that I would like to make. First is that we have to do rapid energy transition. In terms of transforming our energy system from fossil fuel based to clean and renewable energy base. We have to do that in the rapid way because of the climate. We are living in a carbon constrained world, and I think IPCC has stated that we have a very short window of opportunity to avoid climate catastrophe. Increasing 1.1 degrees today, you can see climate havoc everywhere in the world, right? So transforming that in the rapid way, changing the system, reducing emission 45% by 2030 compared to 2010 level is a must, and that's required. But also, we have to understand that as we transform the energy system, the fossil fuel infrastructure is still here. Our demand on the fossil fuel will not gone overnight. So at the same time we invest in the new infrastructure, we have to maintain existing infrastructure because oil demand will still there. Oil is still growing. The electricity is still growing, right? So we have to looking at the balance optimal, at least in the next decade. We have to increase investment in renewable, but at the same time, we have to ensure energy supply and security that will be supplied by the existing infrastructure, which is fossil, until we flip that in the next 2 decades, hopefully. So I think that's one of the challenges. And while we are now, when we refer to emission reduction and net zero emission target, we have to realize that right now, all discussion is so much about power sectors. But when it comes to the emission, we know that half of our emission in Indonesia now from the energy actually come from transport and industry, which has not been properly addressed so far. Energy transition mechanism is about retiring coal plants. How about transport and industry, which also require a proper attention if we would like to reach significant emission reduction and reaching net zero emission. So this I think one of challenge that no one addressed so far. I'd like Bu Sinta mention what Kadin has been doing right now with the Net Zero Hub, and we would be very happy to see how this thing goes into mainstream of the policy and regulation in Indonesia. The second one I would like to say that it's not just transition, but we have to think about creating economic-wide transformation, because energy is an input to the economy. So it means invest in the green economy sectors that could help maintain our economic health and maintain our competitiveness in trade and investment, something like that. So we have to look at this. No one really talk about it. It's about transforming the economy. It's not just the energy system. And the third one is very, very important that we have to address. Here you say just energy transition. What just mean? So it just means that we have to address the impact of energy transition to the poorest, to the regions that depends on extractive industry and fossil fuel production and trade, the workers, and the overall economy that will be impacted of this transition. We haven't really goes into that, but I think that's very, very important to look at. And lastly, I would like to end this comment, my comment with that I got a lot of questions because of this event. Yesterday, someone asked me, what is actually the energy transitions, do you think? I do believe that for Indonesia, you know, energy transition pathway will be different country by country, depends on the situation, right? Depend on the challenges and the opportunities. But one thing, and I have no right to say that this is the right for Indonesia. We know that at least right now I can say that we have to increase renewable, we have to retire coal-fired power plant, and we have done some analysis and we have done some pathways also for Indonesia to reach that. But what very, very important in the energy transition is that for Indonesia, which I think should be incorporated, is that the model for Indonesia is energy transition gotong royong, which I always say. That energy transition gotong royong means that we have to maximize the participations and the role of the people, also the business and the investors. And I think this is true. I've seen a lot in Indonesia that people in the remote area, in the poor village, right, they would like to spend their resources and also make effort, their capacity, to utilize the local renewable energy resources to meet their demand, the energy demand. I think we should start asking these people, what does it mean energy transition for them, and how we can maximize their contributions. And while we meeting the needs, the energy transition meet their needs on the secure and affordable and sustainable energy access, as well as bring in business and investors. I think when Pak Menteri said that we need $1 trillion, I can imagine that, look, if, well, I say that from rooftop PV, we can contribute a lot with the potential of rooftop PV in Indonesia. And we can contribute to that chunk of $1 trillion. What we need is actually don't put us on hold. Don't stop us. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As always, high voltage. Thank you so much, Mas Fabi. But the 3 points well taken. And I think I will take your note on that the energy transition is not only for the energy transition per se, it's for economic transition. And what the just transition means. So for that, I would like to invite, before Pak Septi, I would like to invite Ibu Sujala, Deputy Resident Representative UNDP, to also give the feedback, Bu, on the discussion today. And also I would like if you could address on this issue on a just transition. Thank you, Bu.
Thank you, Ibu Rara, and good morning, dear colleagues and partners who are here. So I think the discussion today has been very interesting in learning about some of the initiatives that are taking place here with different partners, but also the different perspectives in the sense of where we're each sitting, whether it's the minister or whether it's the private sector, as mentioned by Ibu Shinta. But I believe we do have a common joint vision that the minister mentioned today, which is really crucial to get us going. And that shared vision of the necessity of the energy transition and financing needs is something that we share here, at least here in the room. But I would like to focus my intervention on the just angle because I believe it's really a crucial part of the picture and responding to why we're doing this in the first place. We seem to have a lot of information about what is required, etc., but the why is a very important question, and Pak Fabi, you kind of alluded to it in your remarks as well. Firstly, transition of any kind, whether it's the energy sector or any other sector, means that you're shifting the status quo. So there's going to be structural changes and impacts that affect societies, that affect economies, that affect communities. This can be a scary thing, but change can also be an opportunity. And if a study from the International Renewable Agency, IRENA, actually showed that the move to renewable energy will have many positive impacts on growth, on job creation, and on human welfare. Whether it's through the technologies that will be required, the manufacturing services and jobs that will be created, as well as various services. Another kind of co-benefit, co-dividend of this transition is, for instance, better health because of the reduced pollution, because fossil fuel burning is a main cause of the air we're breathing, which is so harmful to our health. And these are good and encouraging sort of indications of what this transition will mean. But this is this requires more than just the policy, and there are specific actions that are needed, because even where the government is affirmative and committed to these changes, which is the case in Indonesia, as we've heard, the market-related factors that drive the transition may widen the inequality that currently exists, and these issues need to be taken into account from the beginning. So I'd like to focus on 2 points mainly, and that is one, this issue of reaching the last mile and leaving no one behind. We've spoken a lot about the kind of financing for the large infrastructure needs, etc., but decentralized solutions in renewable energy can also be very important to improve the household level access, especially in a context like Indonesia with its archipelagic context. So these decentralized, localized solutions are extremely critical. And the second aspect, which relates to some of the issues that have been raised also, the inclusion, the role of SMEs, leaving no one behind, is the critical role of women, which I feel that we've not addressed enough. And it's not just about inclusion, it's not just about participation, but it's really how do we empower women to take the lead in this transition, in their leadership role, in the decision-making that's required. The job creation opportunities, excuse me, that I mentioned are going to be in the engineering, in the manufacturing sectors, which are not traditionally where women are very present. Let's be honest, it's there, but it's not really heavy. So what are we going to need to do from now to enable and ensure that that transition, the new jobs that are created because of this transition, actually have the space for women to take part in a very important manner? And this requires, investment in STEM, in science, technology, and mathematics as well. Again, an area where women are generally not highly participating in those sectors, even where they may be taking courses, and some of the education rates in this sector, I believe in Indonesia, are very encouraging, but this does not translate into jobs later on. And so we may face a situation where during this transition, jobs are being created, but women are being left behind of this transition. So these are important social considerations that we need to think about from the very beginning. And when we talk about the financing and funding needed for this transition, yes, it's about the infrastructure. Yes, it's about the carbon trades and tax cuts, etc. But it's also about the financing needed to invest in these sectors that will actually capacitate communities and people to make the transition smooth and just for those who need it the most. So I'd like to stop here. I'm sure there's many more issues to share, but I'll leave it here for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Sujala. I think that is a valid reminder why actually at the first place we do this energy transition. And also the question that we need to take from the beginning is whether the process of the transition will lead to the widening the inequality, and in which equality is in the rural area where people are not having the access, and also to women, where it's not traditionally as part of the sectors where they can play the dominant and leadership role. So I think that's well taken, and that's echoing also the note from Fabi and from Ibu Sinta Kamdani as part of our energy transition agenda. And the last one, I would like to invite Pak Septia. We also discuss on energy resilience, and there's an importance on the collaboration between neighborhood countries. So you're from the ASEAN Energy Center. Appreciate your share how the ASEAN Energy Center see the Indonesia agenda and how that can be put for the collaboration in the ASEAN. For, of course, collaboration towards the just energy transition in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bu Rara. First of all, on behalf of the ASEAN Center for Energy, we would like to express our sincere thanks for this opportunity. Personally, I would like to express my thanks to Bu Rara for allowing the boss of my boss leave earlier, so we can talk a bit free. But please don't put into the record.
Be reported, so don't worry.
Have a disclaimer, don't put that into the record. On top of that, we really enjoy the keynotes, and I jot down some key elements here. Allow me to put on the table pointers for us to discuss and reflect how we want to move forward in this energy transition. ACE just launched our ASEAN Energy Outlook just last September, and we found out from this outlook the implementation of energy transition is not only challenge of one country, including Indonesia. So all of the countries having challenge in terms of energy transition implementation. And what is the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is the commitment. And also from the outlook, from our projection and also from our finding, we can put this into the table as consideration as well. First is regarding energy imports and exports. In the previous outlook in 2018, we found out the region will become net importer of natural gas and coal in 2025 and 2038 respectively. However, from our current findings, it extended because of many factors. One of them, finding of the reserves and also utilization more of renewable energy, so we can have less dependency of fossil fuel. Like it or not, it's affecting the focus area, especially from the government point of view. Another factor that I would like to share here that affecting the commitment to pursue energy transition, I think this is something in line with what mentioned by Ms. Sujana earlier. Talking about energy transition is actually in line with the trends which within the energy transition position. First is referred to decarbonization, digitalization, decentralization, and democratization. And each trend fundamentally changed how our society purchase, use, and sell the energy. So the question is, looking at the context of Indonesia, are we ready for this kind of change? And of course, this is a big work for us, the government and related stakeholders. I agree with the opinion from Norisan earlier. For this big work, we need strong collaboration, not only from the national level, but also from the regional level. We, the ASEAN Center for Energy, we collaborated with dialogue partners and international organizations. We support the energy blueprint of ASEAN or ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, especially to enhance the utilization of renewable energy and energy efficiency. However, it's not enough, especially we need more and more investment for renewable energy. Echoing what mentioned by Minister earlier, from our finding from 2021 until 2025, at least we need $162 billion investment for renewable energy development. This is for regional context. And if we extend the year until 2040, we need $970 billion investment for renewable energy utilization for the region. So this is a kind of challenge why at the current level our region still having a struggle to put more commitment into the energy transition. From our perspective, we somehow inline the energy transition issue with the environmental issue. However, looking at our discussion today and also from our perspective, looking at the perspective of energy demand, our population and economic is growing at least 3.5 times from 2020 until 2050. What does it mean? It means we will growing in terms of energy needs and also the challenge happening for the social issue. From our point of view, I think it would be great if we prioritize the issue of energy transition to be in line with energy security. Not to mention the current situation of the war and the hot issue of maybe the potential recession that might happen in the global context. I think this is a quite serious discussion that we need to put in place. Of course, to close, I do agree what mentioned by Ms. Karin earlier. This all is about human security, how we want to survive and in line better with the environmental context when we able to develop more and better energy development in the global and also in the regional level. I think I would like to close my comment. Thank you very much, brother.
Thank you very much, Pak Septia. I think the ASEAN Center for Energy should be the Indonesian ambassador as well on how to bring the collaboration in the region. So very interesting how actually the outlook says that Indonesia has more opportunities now. It's a bit changes because of the new reserve and also the utilization of the potential of renewable energy. We are really eyeing, I think, how Vietnam, for example, really push forward with the renewable energy. And there was, Pak Rida mentioned there's one agenda for the grid, regional grid among ASEAN countries. So I think that will be also an interesting avenue on how the region can collaborate in the energy transition, not only to benefit one country, but also the others. So thank you so much. We have 3 distinguished feedback panelists, but of course, I would like also to invite questions from participants here and also from the online participants. But I would like to recall that we have been half an hour late from the schedule. While you have snacks around you, should I get your agreement that we open for 1 or 2 questions from the room before we close the session? Would that be, is there any question that would like, there's one, another one? Yes, so balance, 1 man and 1 woman. Thank you. So please, Pak, kindly introduce your name and also question in the concise manner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm Abdul Karim from DG PPR, Budget Financing and Risk Management, Ministry of Finance. Actually, I would like to ask questions to Ibu Sinta, but unfortunately she have left. But I can redirect this question to Pak Fabi maybe about the carbon.
Fabi actually can be asked any questions. Yeah. So please, feel free.
I'm sure about that. About the carbon market, Pak Fabi, I think the business society is one of the most, have the most importance, yeah, in business community to implement the market trading. And so far, I hear there is still some stumbling blocks in the implementation. And so, in your view, what are those stumbling blocks and how we can address them? And second question is about, again, this actually has to be addressed to Bu Sinta, but maybe Pak Fabi has some knowledge about the blended finance, global blended finance. Is there any connection with the ETM country platform that is run by PTSMI, Pak? Maybe those two schemes can collaborate together to bring more fund to ETM. I think that's 2 questions from me, Bu Rara. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih, Pak Abdul Karim. So I'm not sure whether Fabi can answer that, but maybe please digest that one first. But I would like also to invite, there was a question about carbon pricing. Maybe representative from Ministry of Environment and Forestry is with us online. Okay, while we are checking, may I take the second question while Fabi, and also I see Pak Bram from Chambers of Commerce. Maybe you can text Ibu Sinta or regarding the blended, about the blended finance and the link to the ETM. I would like to invite Ibu, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Rara. I'm Dian. I'm from Asia Pacific Urban Designers. That is a society organization. And I also come from Rigid One Projects. That is a funding company. So this occasion, this event is just at the right coincidence, as I just came from my meeting in Geneva, Switzerland. I met with the sister unit of UNDP, which was a United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. And second occasion after that, I met with the excellencies in United Arab Emirates. Those 2 events are just very related to this meeting. Because at Geneva, we talked about what data and indicators we should use or apply in measuring this climate change risk. And in United Arab Emirates, that is also interesting because we really want to convert to renewable energy, but it's just so not interesting, especially to business. And therefore, even the unrenewable energy stakeholders were really eager to help us. Yes, at that time, I met the giants in the unrenewable energy. You can mention like Aramco, ADNOC, Total, all of them were there. So if I may share my founding from those events, which I hope will be useful for Indonesia, is that we have to make this renewable energy interesting first for business, not only for the government, but also for private companies and all the people. So how to make it interesting? This is just my big conclusion, yeah? So we make it interesting, just like unrenewable energy. And the big task is, of course, on government. You have to secure the lines of business from producer to buyers, ensure that it is profitable for producer. Besides, it will be beneficial for environment and the people generally. And you have to open beneficial cooperations to all funders, not only your favorite funders for all these years. It will be very helpful if our Minister of Finance support this. And then, of course, related to the data, we found that our issues, Indonesian issues, is on data, valid data. We have to provide and procure valid data related to indicators and of achievements, what we want to achieve on our national target. First, we define clear national targets, the criteria, the indicators, not only stop on how much greenhouse gases should be reduced. We have to derive it again to programs and budgets, including spatial plan and management. And to close this, in our part, as we can contribute, we from Rigid One Projects can contribute in funding. So any government or private companies can contact me to get help in funding. Or in all sectors, yeah, not only energy. And then as my society organization, Asia Pacific Urban Designers, we can help in making special plans for energy industry, for cities, and also we can recommend the management. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Dian. So that's a good invitation. We have associations here. We also have a youth society for renewable energy. So why don't you also approach Ibu Dian, Ministry of Finance as well. Thank you so much, Ibu Dian, for your notes and also for the invitation for wider collaboration. So let me come back to the first question regarding the carbon market. Can I invite from the Ministry of Ministry of Environment and Forestry, if they're still online? Otherwise, maybe Fabi, you want to give a shot? So if you make a mistake in your response, don't take it seriously, Pak Abdul Karim. We will convey your question to
I
the
know
right
this is online, so a lot of people are watching. If I made mistake, a lot of protests will come to my phone. But thank you, Pak Abdul Karim. It is a question to Bu Sinta, so I'm looking to Pak Bram actually, because her boss just left. But I try to answer based on my knowledge, and I think it's reflect what we've been doing, studying that we've done in ISR. First, in terms of carbon market, well, I think it's more correct way to put in the context of policies that the carbon pricing. And with that, then maybe we can create the market. But as we know, we have two regulations. First is that the President regulation on the nilai ekonomi carbon, Perpresnek, right? And the second one in regards to the carbon tax on the undang-undang perpajakan. So I think that's a basis. My understanding that there's still a number of derivative regulation are being made right now, and I think I don't know when those regulations are ready, and in my opinion, that is very, very important when we would like to establish this carbon pricing mechanism that lead to the carbon market in Indonesia. I think they should be clear in terms of institutional framework and governance that we expect to see in those regulations that currently being made. So, but I have a comment actually on this on the recent progress of this, as a number of comment I made in the media, I always say that I think that very, very important that we have to link all the carbon pricing with our decarbonization target and effort. And we have to find the optimal pricing to enhance innovation and financing toward low carbon and even toward low carbon technologies, right? That's actually the very, very important thing. And what I have seen so far that there is this connection between the pricing and the regulation on the carbon pricing with net zero emission ambition. And I think we have to close that gap very, very soon. I don't know whether the regulation that currently being made will close that gap, but I think that's the first point on the first question. The second thing, which I think many people are reluctant with this because the lack of information. And also we see all the protests of Kadin with the Indonesia Chamber of Commerce on the last year when this carbon tax being put in the undang-undang perpajakan, because it's very sudden. There is no information. We haven't really seen any study that calculate what actually the impact to the economy, what the impact to the high intensive energy sector, something like that. We don't really have idea what the blueprints look like, I mean, roadmaps for the implementation looks like. So in the case of the lack of information, the uncertainty came. And I think for business, the highest risk is actually uncertainty, because they cannot manage this. And that's all carbon pricing related to the investment and where they are going to put their capital next year, next 2 years, next 3 years, priorities in strategy. So I think I would like to encourage that the governments are more active in sharing the idea, the information. More, I think, study on the impact of to the economy should be carried out. I don't know whether UNDP also that currently help Ministry of Finance can really help that to ease this uneasy with the carbon market. I got a lot of questions on this, and I say I'm not the authorities, so I don't really know what's going on. The second question on the blended finance, well, I think DJPPR should ask that, because that's come from Ministry of Finance, right? But that's what my question is, whether all parties have the same understanding on what blended finance is and what would be the mechanism, the effective mechanism to make blended finance work. But also this, I think, linked to this, lead to the question, which we know currently in the ETM country platform, you have two at least. First is to retire the coal plants, and even that is still talking about PLN, coal asset, and the one to increase renewables, which we have seen in Indonesia right now is the lack of the renewable project that bankable and viable to be financed. So I'm not too worried too much on this source of finance, because we have public-private, we have, I know within this framework of ETM country platform, there is some philanthropy that already said they are going to put the money in the renewable energy sector. The question, and I had a meeting with a couple of members of GFunds, Standard Chartered, SBC. They say that, well, we want to help Indonesia on the energy transition. The question is, where's the project? Where's the bankable and viable project to be financed? I think that's the homework, right? So that's the question, whether we can provide the bankable finance project to be financed through this mechanism, right? I think that's one of the questions. Well, we know that I think today or tomorrow, the discussion on the JETP is underway in Washington, D.C. I hope it will come with a good, and Bu Menteri Sri Mulyani is actually lead the negotiation team, in my understanding, right? We would like to hear good news, whether we can get more than $8.5 billion as given to South Africa, I'm asked by media a couple of months ago how much actually needs. I think I just say that, well, we need double than South Africa. So whether we can get $15 billion, that's up to the negotiator in Washington, D.C. But I hope I answer your question, Pak. Later on, we can Japri, Pak.
So Japri it is. Thank you.
Sorry, can a short following question?
Yeah,
about
but I think remind about the about the time, Pak. The follow-up question can be discussed over the coffee and snack. But I think
by texting.
Thank you. It is an interesting discussion, but the reducing the uncertainties, that's a key on the carbon market, the blended finance, that's a questionable. But although my personal opinion, having different platform of the blended financing maybe is better, so then different actors can access differently. But it has been an interesting discussion. There's one question from online that I would like to take, and I would like to invite Ibu Sujala to address. I think this is also in line with your previous intervention, Bu. This is from Elrika Hamdi. She's my friend actually. Hello, Mbak Elrika, thank you for participating. This is the question actually to government and ADB, but I think it's relevant that with the statement from Ibu Sujala. Question is, how do you plan to use the partnerships of the multilateral development banks to be catalytic to move private capital? 1 trillion is a lot of money that is needed to move such big funds. Transparency through clear disclosure and strong governance is imperative. So the key point here, how should this scheme actually manage the transparency and clear disclosure and the good governance? No one would put such amount of money without the safeguards. So how do you envision these kinds of strong disclosure and governance as needed here? So this is, Bu Sujala is an expert of the governance, so would like to invite your intervention. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Rara. I think expert might be a strong word, but I definitely can share some perspectives on this. And thank you, Ibu Elrika, for the very important question. So, of course, I'm speaking on behalf of UNDP here and can't respond to what ADB or the government would have to say about this. But one important aspect that we need to talk about is de-risking. And I think this question really boils down to how do we minimize the risks that private sector perceive, whether they are actual risks or perceived risks, to enable the kind of investments at scale that we're talking about. And here I'd like to mention two things specifically that UNDP is doing to facilitate this challenge. One is a de-risking for renewable energy that we have, actually. So it's a framework that systematically assesses the barriers and risks that are associated with investment, which can really hold back the private sector. And you know, the de-risking touches everything from regulatory mechanisms in place to accountability. What are the processes and mechanisms in place to ensure that you know, where the investments happen, they're being used for the purposes they're intended. It's also about the ease of doing business. And you know, how many steps, private sector, as we know, you know, efficiency, the bottom line is really something that they care about deeply in addition to all the socioeconomic benefits. But they also like to move fast. And so removing some of these maybe bureaucratic procedures, or at least minimizing them, can play an important role in incentivizing or catalyzing the investments needed. The other is about information transparency, and I think Pak Fabi just alluded to that earlier as well. The risk, the unknown, is really what can also put off a lot of the investments. And so what is the information, how easily accessible it is in terms of the possibilities, is an important angle that we can support through some of these you know, governance-related support that we have as part of the transition. The other angle that I want to highlight is proofs of concept. So UNDP, as you know, is a technical, we provide the technical assistance. We're not a donor per se, but we do have the expertise required to address these challenges at a smaller scale, which can show the results and benefits that can be accrued. And these proofs of concepts, combined with the regulatory assistance, the governance-related reforms, etc., can really be a powerful package to convince MDBs through their concessional loans, but also private sector, to then take these proofs to scale, whether it's in a country or beyond as well. But we have experience doing this. We have experience of doing this in highly fragile crisis contexts, which means that in a context like Indonesia, which is far much more stable, those proofs of concept would be easier probably to achieve. So I think that addresses part of this question. I'm sure there's other perspectives that ADB would share, but that's what I can bring in from what we've been doing at UNDP and what we can keep offering. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Sujala. So I think we are approaching the closing, but I just get Japri from a youth association. So let me invite, youth is our future. We do nothing with the climate, we actually jeopardizing their future. So please, Zagi from the Society for Renewable Energy.
Thank you so much, Mbak Rara. This statement is inspired by the Fabi Tumiwa. Bapak Fabi is burning the spirit of the youth, especially. So regarding this discussion, one thing that I have to bring on the roundtable discussion today is the capacity building and the just transition in Indonesia. From our experience, for instance, this year we installed more than 50 solar panels through the rural areas in Indonesia. A lot of economic activities in there, but there's hundreds of people in there. And very challenging to get there because the difficulty of the geography, but with the youth, we can face the, we can tackle a lot of challenge in there, but we need some sustainable program in that. So if Kadin have a net zero hub and other than that, then so we have also capacity building hub. So every funders, every government can rely on to increase the youth movement in energy transition through increasing the awareness until to implementation in the some rural electrification, I guess. So maybe in the total population of Indonesia, more than 50% are dominated by Gen Z and the millennials. So we have to be more aggressive to accelerate the energy transition. So we hope many stakeholders can support our initiative to achieve the just transition and also to bring the youth participation in accelerating the energy transition. Maybe that's all from me. Thank you so much, Mbak Rara.
Big applause. So it's not only an empty space that the bonus of demography, we have the youth. So let's work with the youth in the energy transition. So thank you very much with that very inspiring closing from Zagi on the youth participation in energy transition. I would like to thank again all the keynote speakers and also the feedback panelists and all of you who participating, sharing ideas and also enthusiasm in our pathway for the energy transition, for a just, for the energy transition. And with that, as a moderator, I forgot to introduce myself in the beginning. I'm Ferania Andrea from UNDP Indonesia. And thank you very much. Keep healthy and keep the spirit high. We are getting there. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.